Okay, so here's a couple of questions that were asked over email, and here's the first one. You're asked to use either a greater than, use either a less than or a greater than sign to try and make this a true statement. So, and this is not the correct answer. So we have 1/4 and then it's blank, and then we have 9/22. Okay, so in order to decide without a calculator, which of these is larger, so we're less than or greater than, what we need to do is convert each of these numbers into decimals so that we can compare their decimal equivalents. Okay, so let's take this 1/4 and make a decimal out of it. I'm going to take 4 and divide it into 1, and since 4 doesn't go into 1 evenly, I need to add a decimal here and then a 0 behind it. Okay, I'm going to bring my decimal up, and I can add as many zeros actually as I want. And then I'm going to take 4 into 10. I'm going to kind of ignore this decimal and take 4 into the 10. And 4 goes into 10 twice. So I'm going to put the 2 above the 0 because that's the one that I'm taking it into. And 2 times 4 is 8. If I do a subtraction, 10 minus 8 is actually 2, and then I'm going to bring down my next 0. Okay, and then now I'm taking 4 into 20, and 4 goes into 25 times, and so I say 5 times 4 is 20, and when I do my subtraction, I'm left with a remainder of 0. Okay, so the decimal equivalent for 1/4 is 0.25, and I want to compare that with the decimal equivalent for 9/22. This is one way to do it, by the way. You can also get a common denominator and then compare the numerators. But I think this is probably the easier way. So for this one, I'll take 22 into 9. And 22 doesn't go into 9 evenly, so we need to add a decimal place and a 0. Bring our decimal up. And now I'm really looking at 22 into 90. And I'm thinking 22 will go into 90 probably 4 times maybe. So let's try it off to the side here. 22 times 4, that's an 8 and 8, so 88. So 0.4, and 4 times 22 then is my 88. I subtract, I have a 2, and I can bring down my 0. Now, I can continue this, right? But I don't, just looking at, okay. I don't need to. I have enough information here to answer this question. This is 0.2, this is 0.4, and like I say, this is 0.4 something. It's going to continue, but I can tell now that this fraction is larger than this fraction. So there's no point in continuing to finish this here. So I would say that my 1/4 is less than my 9/22. Okay, so that's 1.2.51. And then another question was asked on 1.2.75. And this question asked us to find the absolute value of 0/10. Okay. And when we're doing absolute values, it's important to remember that the absolute value is defined as the distance from 0 on the number line. So for instance, if I have a 0 here, and let's say I have 3 here and -3 here, the distance from 0 is the same. This distance right here is a +3. This distance right here is a +3. We don't think of distance as being negative. So effectively what the absolute value sign does is it takes a number and it makes it positive. The one exception to that is 0. The absolute value of 0 is just 0, and 0 doesn't have a sign associated with it. Okay, so when we want to do something like the absolute value of 0/10, we actually first have to do this division. We have to simplify the inside of the absolute value first. So 0 divided by 10 is actually just 0. So when I go to evaluate the absolute value of 0, I would get 0. So my answer there would be 0. To just clarify this up here, what I was talking about, if I were to take the absolute value of a +3, I get a +3. The absolute value of a -3 also gives me a +3, And this is what the absolute value does. It takes any negative number and it makes it positive. Okay, so, and that's because it's just referring to the distance from 0. And it should make sense that 0 is has no distance from 0 on the number line. It is exactly at 0. Okay, so the answer to that question is 0.